Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where it's about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Family Law. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I feel like this might be the heaviest episode so far. Like, obviously, some of the episodes had heavy moments, obviously lean into the drama, but this episode, it seemed pretty woo with just like the commentary on just everything. Obviously, it deals with a guy named Bailey who was in this polyamorous relationship with a husband and wife, but they kind of cut him out, even though he kind of, put his passions, his career as an artist on side. Yes, he wasn't really making a lot of money, but he still put his job and everything on the side to be with them, and it was fun and everything. I mean, he liked more so the husband Gavin and not as much the wife, but he was there and he kind of became like a housewife, and then all of a sudden they just dropped him like a bag of sacks. Well, it turns out the wife in this situation, and what was her name? Something Steele. She's basically just the way this is. It seems like I'm sure she's could be applicable to a lot of people. Obviously, one person that comes to my mind you can't help but draw a parallel to is Alex Jones. So she just says a lot of very foul, let's call it what it is, some very foul, some ignorant, and some very hateful shit. And she's basically built an audience off of that. Well, they were going to originally give Bailey like a $50,000 settlement, but he'd have to basically sign stuff to pretend like the relationship never happened. Well, the fact of the matter is, things get really riled up when Abby because legally she's not allowed to talk to her because it's without her client being present and stuff like that, talking to the opposition. And so it's basically hey, we'll control the narrative. And well, Miss Steele took Abby's advice and took control of the narrative and basically shit on not only Daniel, her, calling Bailey a liar and everything and even suggesting this whole thing is basically threw the entire firm under the bus. And she also really quickly, there was that scene beforehand where she was just kind of the minority group now, and my husband's a part of that, straight white men, and it's just and even he's kind of, and obviously their dad kind of agrees. He's like, I can't even compliment a woman without it being an issue or something like that. And he was like, oh, maybe I was always polyamorous. And Abby's like, no, Dad, you were just always no, you weren't polyamorous. You were just a cheating asshole. But yeah, that commentary just kind of it's because it turned into a nasty, vile situation. But the reason, this episode hits too real because it's something you see every day. It is wild when you see what people can do. I think it is easier to get a mob on your side now than it is. You have a voice on the internet, and there are so many like-minded people who are just looking for that person to be their beacon of hope. People who hold on to those certain ideologies, they're just looking for someone to be like, yes, you, oh my God, you have the strength, you have the voice to say, you won't kowtow to the woke snowflake leftist blah blah blah. It's once again, the thing is, there's issues on the left, there's issues on the right, but no one's really willing to sit in the middle. And even then, it's I think you can be okay being maybe some light to moderate side of things. You definitely are not good to lean on any extremist side of the left or the right. It's never good to live any portion of your life on the extremes. It's definitely not good to have extremes. And in most regards, I don't think extremes should be seen as a good thing, but a lot of, once again, this episode in particular, and this was back in 2021. I mean, who knows when they actually filmed it. It could have been this is what the political sphere has been like for the past couple years. I mean, just what the internet's been like for the past couple years. And you know what makes it even worse? She doesn't believe half the shit she says. That's what really because that's why I'm I don't even know what's worse. Would I prefer it if you believed all the hateful shit you said, or because it makes you're such a hypocrite on so many levels. One, she knows what her husband's situation is. She's the one parading around the values that are taken away from what is considered traditional marriage. And it's that's such horseshit considering your husband, not only with Bailey, but apparently over the years, he's had multiple affairs with men, but you're doing doing it to protect him because not only protecting your own image, but it's also because you do love your husband. So that's why you kind of accept these circumstances. But it's like you're parading, and some would make the argument, those who kind of put up the most bravado are the ones who are like, oh, you're saying all this shit while you got all these skeletons in your closet. Like, the very thing you're against is actually part of your life. We've seen that not only in the past, we're still seeing it today with certain political figures saying like, oh, I'm against this. But didn't you have certain things, haven't you take advantage of, not advantage, haven't you partaken in said thing you're against in the past? On multiple occasions, apparently. Let's call a spade, right? So but like I said, I don't know which one's worse. I mean, we can all admit they're equally bad. Spewing hateful shit just because you believe it, or spewing hateful shit just because you know it will get you attention. But that's where you kind of get, I'll go ahead and say it, like the Alex Jones of it all, because wasn't the whole thing like, oh, it's a character, blah, 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 it's just a character. I didn't really mean what I said. It was kind of it's a character I created, but then kind of immediately getting back on your platform to be like, oh, they're trying to like silence me and they won't. It's like, oh boy. And just everyone kind of getting the rough end of the deal. We don't know if like Daniel got it pretty rough and so did Abby. It makes sense considering Abby and Daniel were the ones she specifically called out by name. The rest of the firm didn't get, like, the general firm gets attacked, but it's Daniel and Abby because there's a name associated with them. She's the one that called them out. They end up getting doxxed, and it ends up being that bullshit of, well, you can't control what your audience does. It's like when you rile people up with such rhetoric, like when the internet creates a space where you can create a mob so easily. Because especially for people who feel unrightfully so disenfranchised, as in like they feel like, oh, we don't have a voice. Our voice is taken from us who want to spew this hateful shit, that it's like, right, we back this person saying that they're going to do these terrible, terrible things to Abby, and calling her a slut, saying that they are going to gang rape her. So that's a whole thing. And then Daniel's like, yeah, I've heard some anti-Semitic stuff, some, calling, anti-Muslim stuff kind of being thrown at him. He was even saying, oh yeah, they kind of thought I was this. So he's like, yeah, there's that. So it's like, but for him, he's like, he even tells Abby, hey, if you want to back away from this case, I get it. He's like, I live in a place where I have like, a doorman named Brutus, and it's like a pretty like high security place. You have kids to worry about. So if you want to back out from this case, you can. But Abby, it's like, right, I kind of stirred the pot with this situation, so I'm going to see it through all the way to the end. So there's that. But also, it's just like, right, someone who's a terrible person and a liar, Abby's not going to like take that line down. It's like, no, we're going to fight that. But sadly, Bailey doesn't have anything that can prove that Bailey and what's her husband's name, Greg? Like, was it Greg or was it something else? Like, yeah, that there was something between them. He took photos, but it was unaware. Like, the moment they were bringing up, like, oh, there's no way he kept them, I'm like, he did keep them because it meant something to him. Because even Bailey had this painting of them together. He's like, maybe that's why I did all this lawsuit stuff, because I just wanted, them know that I was hurting about this whole situation, like, us being over, and I wanted to know if he actually felt the same way. And it's like, he's like, it's super. I was like, no, like, everyone wants to, because you want to know what you have with someone was real, that it meant something. And obviously, he didn't say anything in the scene, but you could tell it really struck a chord with Daniel because of everything with Danielle. So, which he tried to see her in this episode, but she was kind of like, yeah, I'm ghosting you. Leave me the hell alone. We'll circle back to more of that later on. But after everything they did, they're dropping the case and stuff like that. But ultimately, they make it a point of, they held up like Bailey's like painting of him, and once again, I believe his name is Greg, Miss Steele's husband. And it did, like, the moment we saw someone following Abby, I was like, it had to be him, and it totally was. I mean, he picked the worst, like, just randomly, especially because everyone in the firm was on heightened, like, was heightened and worried about everything, that it's just like, he had to, he picked the wrong time to just kind of, like, randomly jump out and, like, but it's like, hey, he presented the photos, and now Miss Steele and her husband are going their separate ways. And it's like, cool, we'll keep this hush hush. You give Bailey a certain amount of money and we can go call it a day. And this way, because it's like, right, at the end of the day, if she gets found out to be the fraud that she is, that mob will immediately turn on her. And it's like, right, Abby would want her to kind of like taste her medicine, but at the same time, it's like, no, I'm not going to like basically turn the mob that you had against us back at you, because that's not fair. Like you do not deserve to, like, yes, you might be a shitty person, you say some shitty things, but no one deserves to be threatened like that. You know, the things that were kind of getting thrown at her and Daniel, no one deserves that, no matter how vile of a person that she is. And so she got to get back on her platform, continue spewing things, and got to control the narrative to be like, oh, turns out the law firm wasn't corrupt. In fact, it ended up being my husband lying. And I love that thing at the end where, like, obviously, it's like, well, when it comes to the court of public opinion, how's this going to play out? Jerry's like, well, obviously people are going to be on the husband's side. But then Cecil was like, yeah, but then, like, but Miss Steele was the one that actually got cheated on. And then Abby was like, yep, that's exactly how this is going to play out. The left is going to be like, oh, feel sympathetic in this regard, but the right's also going to feel sympathetic about Miss Steele. So it's like, yeah, it's literally split down the middle. And I love that Cecil's like, why am I the right? They're like, really? Because he's not defensive of the right, but he's coming from the perspective of, I follow a lot of different people from different political backgrounds, kind of trying to say, like, I'm trying to kind of keep an even footing and even ground in all territories. But I would say to Cecil, and I think this is kind of applicable, I think anyone should keep in mind, when someone is saying some hateful shit like that, to me, like, every other point you have is moot. You're not even worth following. You're not worth listening to anymore. The moment you are able to spew such hateful, vile stuff, it's just like, yeah, I think we should all take an opportunity, like, when someone starts, like, pushing out vile narratives like that, like if you're trans, then there's something mentally wrong with you. So the moment someone starts, it's like, no, I don't care what other points you have. You might have some valid arguments and criticisms on the other points. It's like the moment you start spewing vile stuff like that, nothing else out your mouth matters, because to me, you lose any credibility, because it's like, yeah, you might have had some good points here, but then you have some dog shit takes, and it just to me, those takes are so personal that it feels like those make you seem like a shitty human being. And to me, you being a shitty human being is enough for me to not want to listen to you. So that's what that comes down to. And Cecil kind of, like I said, he got a little offensive, but I'm like, yeah, like, don't follow her, someone who says all that, especially when you work in a very inclusive environment like you do. Like, I mean, you know, one of the people who works there is Lucy, who has a wife. What about Jerry, who is trans? Like, that's why I was like, I don't know. And he also, when the going got tough, he kind of stayed home, which everyone kind of called him a coward for that. Daniel even got on him about it. But he's like, I have every right to work in a safe environment, which is true. You have 100%. But it's also like, there's also that thing, but you're also like, yeah, Jerry showed up to work. Lucy showed up to work. Everyone else showed, I mean, everyone who felt, you are a little bit of a different case. I mean, we have no idea whether, like, everyone showed up, but even Nino, the newest hire, she was like, yeah, my dad didn't want me to show up, but I decided to show up. It's like, yeah, the new hire is willing to show up, but you, the paralegal, wouldn't. That's where it kind of, and I could easily see Cecil, like, suffering. I mean, because it's also like, we saw, like, how you had, that boy's side, like, a couple episodes back when he was kind of, I mean, obviously that to me, that's the same parallel of, like, she's a very extremist person, and that was a very extremist situation where he was sent to a camp to basically be electrocuted back into, like, to be straight, So that's why it does feel like, but I think people have that tendency of, like, I won't use any examples. There's some people, there's one person that some people are like, oh, this person has some good points. I'm like, yeah, but he's done some stuff. I mean, I just kind of don't want to listen to anything this particular person says, because they come off like an asshole. Like, I'm an asshole sometimes, but it's like, yeah, I'm an asshole in my own way. I'm not an asshole in certain ways. It's like, oh, you said that, and that was completely unnecessary, and you have these very fucking weird views on certain things. That's just kind of my point. It's just, I don't know, like I said, this episode really hit home, like, because I think this is an episode, like, it's just something we all see every day, and it's just like, and what makes matters worse is Harry takes her on as a client afterwards. I'm like, after everything, she literally could have ruined this business, and you're taking her on as a client. It's like, yeah, but she has deep pockets. And he's bringing Abby into the fold because he's like, hey, like, regardless of everything, you are someone that's willing to get in the trenches, do whatever it takes to win a case. Because Jerry had a conversation with him earlier in the episode, like, you know, you need to ease up on Daniel. You're rough on Daniel. He's your own son, you know? But he's like, yeah, but because of his view, he views that like Daniel's a little too soft, and I'm sure he would have the same perspective on Lucy, but I also don't think he'd be so hard on Lucy. But he sees like, hey, I'm tough on Abby, but also like she's a little rough around the edges, but she's got just the right amount of grit I need around here. I mean, besides, I think it's also, once again, some psychological thing of he's trying to make up for the fact that he wasn't there in her life. Obviously, we're kind of deep diving into there being extenuating circumstances to that, but still. There's just, and Daniel's just left kind of like broken at the end of this shit. Not broken, but just kind of like disappointed. Because it's like, right, this is like, he walked away from Danielle thinking it was the right thing to do, right for him, but he does regret it, and he could have even Abby's like, you could like, undo that, but he's like, no, I think I burnt that bridge. He did appreciate all the compliments he was getting at that gay club. They're like, oh, Mr. like nice chin or nice jaw or something like that. Nice jawline or something. And the guy was like, oh, so what are you, firefighter? He was like, I'm a lawyer. And the guy was like, oh. I was like, oh, lawyers are, I guess it's because like everyone's like, oh my God, lawyers are the worst thing ever. Like, it's like, yeah, lawyers, it's just, I think sometimes people probably have the perspective of lawyers are probably the most despicable. Probably next to politicians, the lawyers can be probably the most despicable people. Because, yes, they can be good when they're defending you, but it's like who they kind of who a lawyer might choose to defend can make you go like, yeah, lawyers suck. That's a perspective, I think, that's just like, right, the whole point of a lawyer is you're supposed to give everyone equal, treat every client like, hey, I would give every client the best defense possible, and that means even representing some very foul people. So I think maybe that's kind of why he got the cold shoulder at the end when the moment the guy was like, found he was almost like okay, and just like walked away from Daniel. So he was enjoying the attention for a while, because for him it's like, yeah, the last time anyone kind of looked at him like, so like, oh my God, you're amazing, or starry-eyed was Danielle. So. And because of both Abby and Daniel got doxxed, Frank and the kid, there was some guy that was in their backyard. We never found out who he was, but he had to be someone that was one of her followers, ended up like showing up in their backyard. So they ended up having to move in with Abby's mom for a little while, which is even more so of a thing of like, right, this lady's crazy followers ended up like showing up at your grandchildren's house. Like, why would you still take her on? Like, that's why I feel like there's a conflict of interest there. But it's like, oh, it's for the betterment of the business. And it's like, Abby's probably caught in this awkward place of like, well, he's trying to give me more bigger responsibilities. But it's like, it's this lady. I don't like this lady. Like, this lady and everything she represents, especially considering her followers and consider what they said about me. And, and she showed up like, she was like, oh, okay. And when Jerry was kind of giving her a look like, oh, she knows where the conference room is. And she was almost like, okay. I'm like, you act like you do not deserve all the smoke, like, and like the death beams Jerry sending out. You 100% deserve it, So that's the interesting thing. There's the whole Abby and Lucy situation where Abby's bringing up the fact is like Lucy, that she throughout the episode is throwing out like these like cheating innuendos or whatever, and she's looking at Lucy, and it's like, oh, I know. And once again, I figured, like, I was curious how she was going to handle it, but I also was like, well, to be fair, I knew it would hit her in a sore spot because she was cheated on. So of course that would cut deep. So she's really disappointed in Lucy for doing that, because it's like, how can you do that? Especially because she met your wife. She's like, wow, your wife's awesome. My wife even invited me over for dinner and stuff. But how could you do that to your own wife? Hell, like even at one point, Maggie saw her phone being like, oh my God, I think the people who are, might have gotten your phone too, because it was a message saying, oh, you dirty girl, that cat emoji is mine. I was like, Jesus Christ. And she's like, oh, I'll just block it. This is fine. I'm like, wow, Lucy. Luckily you had that excuse locked and loaded in this situation. But it's like, yeah. And she's even telling Abby later on, it's like, yeah, it was a moment of weakness. I'm sorry. But it's like, Abby's like, yeah, because of therapy, it's like, usually those moments of weakness are kind of representative of something larger. And she's like, yeah, I'm sorry. But it's like, yeah. Are you only sorry because you what you did, or are you sorry because you got caught? We as the audience know it's like, no, and that's the thing. You've done this isn't once. You've continued to do this. That wasn't at least on screen, we've seen you with someone other than your wife twice, and it's like, because she was even like trying to tell Daniel in the beginning, it's like, it's a good thing, like, right, it's better to like break something off when you know it's not right, rather than string a person along and cheat with another woman. Once again, making a dig at Lucy. So that's where things stand. Which, speaking of Lucy, Daniel was actually kind of severely pissed at her because she's like, oh, I didn't see you at the double boogie boarding thing or whatever, like not boogie boarding, but like the thing that they normally do, like out there in the waves on their boards. He was like, yeah, I'm kind of done with you, which is interesting because like him and interesting that this episode, him and Abby got closer, but him and Lucy are actually further apart because I think it's because Lucy's the one who set up the pool. Like, it's like, yes, Jerry took advantage of it, and I think Daniel probably upset, but he kind of let that slide. Abby's an asshole, so Abby's gonna do asshole-ish things, but it's like, you were my sister. At least Abby and me didn't grow up, and once again, she's an asshole, so I'm gonna let that slide. But you are my sister, and you're the one that set up this poll about, hey, how long my relationship is gonna last, and you're gonna be apologetic about it now, saying that you liked her. It's like, if you really felt that way, you wouldn't have set that up after we were already engaged, because like you could have called it off, but you never did. You kept it going. You could be like, well, they're engaged now, let's go. No, you kept it going, So it's like, it's kind of, for him, it's kind of wrong of you to feel that way now. So, which, I mean, obviously Lucy's got a lot, because it's like, right, Abby now knows about it and probably is kind of guilting you into it. It's like, once again, I said it before, I believe doctors kind of make the worst patients, so she's kind of like the therapist, so it's like, she doesn't recognize, like, for whatever reason, the issues that are kind of going on here, but when you're in the middle of it yourself, I think you kind of I think she's turning blinders on. It's because of the whole baby talk, I think, is really what's skewing this. It seems like that's kind of been but it's also like, have you talked to Maggie about it? I don't think you have, and that's what's the issue. Like, talk, especially because Lucy's a communicator. That's what makes, but once again, that's why I feel like when you're in it, you just can't, you're not thinking rationally. Like, she's not the same advice, like the advice she would give someone else in her circumstances, she's not following it, because I don't think she can't have that, she doesn't have that outside enough perspective in her own situation to give herself that advice of like, right, whatever it is, you're cheating for a reason, because there's something, and I believe that something is, because usually if you're cheating, it's because it's something you're not getting in your own relationship. And for her, it's like, her wife is all about the baby and stuff, and they're not probably going out and having fun like they want to. Like Maggie, for Lucy, it's probably like, hey, let's go out and have fun. Like, we're married and we can have fun together, but now it's just like, right, because you're pushing this baby thing, and it's all she feels like Maggie really talks about, and it's just so important to her, and Lucy's just not there at that point. Maybe she eventually can be, or maybe she never will be. But once again, communication is key. Communication is important. So, what's interesting though is Frank, which also there's this Sophie situation where it's like, right, she and her mom were on good terms for like a part of an episode, and ever since then she continues to be the dickweed she is to her mom, because it's like, I don't know. She's just like, yeah, sure, goodbye, mom. Like, just so, and even Frank's just kind of like, oh, Jesus. But Frank and like the moment Abby was changing her shirt and she was in her bra, and he was just kind of like, he kept looking down and kind of having to look up. I'm like, because she's so casually having the comment, because she's not thinking much of it. It's like, right, you're a married couple. Yeah, you're kind of like separated for right now, but it's like, she's not thinking much of it. He's like, oh, I brought that bra for you. She's like, that's my favorite. They do their thing. I'm like, wow, you're having sex in the house. I mean, I guess it's no different if you were just at home, but the difference is it's not only the kids in the house. You didn't wait till the kids were gone. The situation, they're in the house, potentially sleep in their own rooms, but also Abby's mom's in the house, which Abby's mom goes, oh my god, you two slept together, which they're kind of awkward around each other, so that's going to be interesting to see how that kind of plays out going forward. So just a lot of really interesting, like I said, this is just kind of a very drama heavy episode. I think this might be the most I've cussed in a review in a while. I get pretty potty mouth in the review, but like this one is just kind of like, I don't know, man, that hateful shit just kind of like rubs me wrong. And it's like, yeah, I'm a snowflake. Yeah, I know. I'm so woke. I'm the wokiest woke. Anyway, yeah, I'm just really interested to see where all this goes, the aftermath of all this, going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.